G'day there, it's Charles Mackenzie from Infected Blood Australia, and I'm coming to you from Sydney Harbour on this Monday the 2nd of May. I've got some interesting clouds above me and I'm wondering whether they'll produce any rain, because we've had nothing but rain throughout our summer and throughout our autumn thus far, and throughout Easter. But hopefully it won't rain for the next couple of minutes when I talk to you about how I'm lamenting my frustrations with Australia's political leadership. And today, the comedian and political commentator Friendly Geordies, who, if you've ever seen Friendly Geordies, perhaps you'll agree with me that I think he's one of the best comedic talents to have emerged out of Australia in recent years. And Friendly Geordies today shared a post about how the federal Liberal member for Wentworth here in Sydney had bought CSL shares in 2020, just months before Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison gave a $1 billion contract to CSL to be the manufacturer of Australia's COVID vaccine, the AstraZeneca jab. Of course, that proved to be not so good. And we actually, from the outset, said to people that under no circumstances should they accept the AstraZeneca jab. Not because we're anti-vaxxers in any way, no. It's because of the company that manufactures the jab, CSL, are Australia's biggest killers. CSL are guilty of Australia's worst treatment scandal. This is the blood treatment, Factor VIII, that was given to Australians with the bleeding disorder haemophilia. Did you know that 100% of the people that use CSL's Factor VIII product ended up with deadly viruses like HIV and hepatitis C, and 1,400 thus far have been killed? And we've got survivors in our group who are surviving with the effects of having lived with HIV from CSL products or lived with the deadly virus hepatitis C, and many have developed liver cancer, and they get not one drop of help from CSL. And the reason for that is because CSL were indemnified after the fact, after the government established that CSL had knowingly distributed contaminated blood to children and other patients. The Australian Labor government of the 1990s indemnified CSL. So that meant that for a generation, survivors and their families have been left destitute, abandoned, without one drop of help. And it's left to poor fools like me to represent this group. And this group have basically had no help, nothing. We've basically been lived under clouds like this because CSL have said that it didn't happen, basically. CSL have said that everything they did was done with best science advice, best health advice, and they don't have any culpability or responsibility to the thousands of families they've affected with their contaminated blood. Well, you know, Dave Sharma in 2020, this is an Australian politician. Dave Sharma just bought into Australia's biggest killers because we suspect that Dave Sharma had insider knowledge. Yes, a privileged knowledge from the government, from Scott Morrison, that Scott Morrison was going to hand this juicy amount of Australian taxpayer dollars to this Goliath CSL. CSL were privatised. They used to belong to us. In 1994, the Australian government privatised a sovereign asset of Australia. And here we are giving more billions of dollars for blood treatments and for any latest jab that this company wants to manufacture. They used to belong to us, and we're handing them more billions of our taxpayer money. It's crazy. It's like once owning a family home, then selling it, only to have to release it for like 100 million times the value of what it was sold for. That's what's going wrong with CSL. CSL is an open wound of corruption on Australia. I'll give you an example. The contaminated blood scandal was global. Before the 2000, Canada was hit by a scandal. Europe was hit by a scandal. America was hit by a scandal. The UK was hit by blood scandals. Thousands of people were infected with HIV and hepatitis C from contaminated blood transfusions and treatments. In those respective countries, the victims and their loved ones in many cases were given help. There's financial assistance for victims in England. There's not financial assistance to their families yet, but that's happening now with a massive inquiry that they've got in the UK called the Infected Blood Inquiry. There's been assistance for victims in Canada, in Ireland, all around the world, but there's just one country that never gave one drop of assistance to any of its haemophiliacs or any of its infected blood victims, and that country is Australia, home of CSL, the world's largest blood products manufacturer, and a company that has Australian politicians buying into it just a couple of months before it gets a juicy $1 billion contract, Dave Sharma. And what does Dave Sharma or his Liberal government have to say about Australia's worst treatment scandal? What does he have to say about children being knowingly distributed treated and injected with contaminated blood products from CSL. That's murder, Dave Sharma. What do you have to say about that? Eh? You've got nothing to say. There's not one political leader in Australia with anything to say. We've gone to every politician and not one politician will speak up for us. I'll give an example. Today we talked about how the brilliant comedian Friendly Geordies shared a post about CSL. Congratulations, Friendly Geordies. You've just bumped into the company that caused Australia's biggest cover-up and medical scandal. But okay, so that's one notable Australian. We went to another internet sensation, a chap called Joel Jamal. And we said, Joel, will you help us? And Joel, he didn't seem very enthusiastic because I don't think he particularly likes topics like this, people being infected with HIV or Hep C. I got that vibe from him that there may be, he's got a bit of an issue with people like me. But, he said, oh no, he'll get his friend Senator Malcolm Roberts to help. So then he arranged for Senator Malcolm Roberts to help. And do you know what helped Senator Malcolm Roberts of One Nation helped us? He blocked us. He blocked the campaign for victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal. Perhaps Joel had said to him, listen, there's thousands of Australians, tens of thousands affected by HIV and Hep C, contaminated blood, and we don't want to get involved with that. And so Malcolm Roberts blocked us. So not one Australian politician will speak up about this company CSL, but there's quite a number of Australian politicians who will invest in CSL because CSL get all these guaranteed government contracts. And don't forget, it was CSL and AstraZeneca that lobbyists the heaviest. They lobbied the heaviest for coerced jabs, for mandated jabs. It was them because they're the manufacturers. Why wouldn't they? This is outrageous, Australia. We can't get one big-time Australian or one big-time politician to speak up for victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal. It'd be different if we were British, Canadian, Irish, anyone else in the world we'd get spoken up for, but not here in Australia. And it's because we have the home of the world's largest blood products manufacturer and one of the world's largest jab manufacturers, the corrupt CSL. And we have political leadership like Dave Sharma who want to buy in to murder but don't want to speak up to victims of bloody murder. Thank you. And if you could support our call for a Royal Commission, we'd be very appreciative. There'll be a link associated with this video. Please click on it or go to our bio. If you're watching this on Instagram, you can click and you can support our call for a Royal Commission into the CSL Australian Red Cross blood scandal there. Thank you for listening.